Thank you, everybody, for coming to the twice monthly meeting of the Mayor and Common Council of City of Westminster. We'll begin the meeting as we always do with a pledge to the flag and a moment of silence. Where's the flag? There we go. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. If you have an electronic device, please silence it for the duration of the meeting out of courtesy to others. We have a very full agenda. But before we get started, I want to recognize that we have a scout in the audience. You want to introduce yourself, son?
My name is Elliot Hurl. I'm from Troop D95, and I'm here to do a medevac.
Which one?
Citizenship in the community.
Outstanding. Welcome. Hope you get something of value from this. One other housekeeping item we have to amend the agenda. There's one item that's incorrectly categorized. The medical cannabis overlay is not going to be introduced as an ordinance tonight, but actually introduced as new business. So we need to amend the agenda to that effect.
I'll make a motion that we amend the agenda as you stated, Mr. President.
Thank you.
A second.
I'm happy to vote for it. I just don't think, Mr. President, you need to get us to do that. I think you
Don't
can
we?
do it as president. You set the agenda.
Was the agenda approved? Did you have a motion to approve the agenda?
Not yet, but I'm about to ask for
So
that.
then you can amend the agenda,
I can do that
yes.
with my power.
Yes, you
The agenda's amendment,
Shouldn't we
bang.
have like a
we're off to the
scepter
races.
or something?
You got a hammer.
Had it already been approved?
Bam, amend agenda. Huh?
Had it already been approved, so we need a motion to amend.
I see. All right. First item of business, approval of the minutes of the meeting of September 14th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, Mr. President.
I'll second, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussions, additions, deletions, amendments, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. We have no public hearings. We have 4 items on the consent calendar. A motion to accept the consent calendar?
So moved, Mr. President.
Second that?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Consent calendar is approved. The mayor is not here. He is attending a conference, so there are no reports from the mayor. Reports from standing committees. Ms. Albert?
Yes, I do have something to report tonight, just briefly. As many of you might know, Monsignor Art, that was a pastor at St. John Church for 17 years, was a very loved person and has recently died. We have been contacted, our Public Works Committee, in writing from Monsignor Farmer, the present pastor, with a request that they want to honor him and remember him, and he loved golf. So the request is in one of their driveways, they would like to name it Monsignor Art Drive. So the request, I've spoken to Larry Bloom already, and it will be going to Jeff Glass.
Oh, okay,
So-
great.
Yeah, and for the signage, he wants to have a sign.
On the campus of
Yeah,
St. John's.
Yeah, on the driveway going
Right.
into the church.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so that request has come to us, and we are following through. So thank you, that's it.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Albert.
Mm-hmm.
Mr.
Doc?
President,
Yes?
I think that's a very nice idea. And perhaps we could do it as a resolution from the council, and then we could have something to present to the church,
Well, yeah.
if maybe the staff could.
Any comments or
something for
discussion about that? All right, that sounds like an outstanding idea. You're okay with that, Ms. Albert?
Yeah, I think it would be wonderful, something we can think about, and I think they would be very pleased, as well as the community, that we would do that.
Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, he was a wonderful pastor, and I think it's appropriate that we
Right.
recognize
Indeed.
him. So.
All right, Dr. Becker?
I don't have anything to report from a standing committee, but I would just like to say fantastic Fall Fest.
All right, thank you. Mr. Pecoraro?
Nothing, Mr. President, except to echo Councilwoman Becker's comment. It really was a fabulous Fall Fest, and many thanks to all the city staff who spent so much time on it.
And Mr. Cavacci?
So, Mr. President, you'll have to bear with me. I have 14 bullet points I'd like to go over.
Sure. Take your time.
No report.
Nothing?
No. We got a long meeting, but anything I have can wait till the next one.
I just have three items. One is, I think the mayor mentioned last time I saw in the minutes that we were out in San Diego and accepted an award for our fiber project, and it was nice to get that kind of recognition. And then, in addition, last week I was invited to the White House to a fairly large meeting of the NTIA and the USDA to have a discussion about broadband in the United States and plans to increase the amount of broadband available, and they were very interested in our project. So we had the opportunity to present what we're doing on a fairly large stage. It was pretty interesting. And that got a lot of questions. But once again, it demonstrated just how far out in front of the rest of the country we are with this project. So that was also gratifying. And then we have an award here from the Government Finance Officers Association for a distinguished budget presentation for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2015, that Ms. Palmer received in recognition for the outstanding work that we've been doing and she's been doing with our budget. So congratulations, Ms. Palmer. Recognition well deserved. And again, right, this is not the first time we've gotten this. This is
It's our
third?
It's at least our third, maybe our fourth.
Yeah. So, once again,
Very
fantastic.
nice.
All right, council comments and discussion. Any issues to be brought up or discussed by the council?
Outstanding Fall Fest once again, and the weather held.
Indeed. All right, on to bids. We have none, and then ordinances and resolutions. First is introduction and approval of ordinance number 857, the floodplain ordinance. Who's going to discuss this? Ms. Levan.
Good evening. So this is an ordinance amending your Chapter 83 of your city code, which relates to floodplains. You have Chapter 83 in your code as a consequence of the city's participation since 1977 in the National Flood Insurance Program, and it allows persons living in the floodplain in the city to obtain flood insurance because you comply with appropriate regulatory conditions for the issuance of that. There were recently amendments to the National Flood Insurance Study and to the related flood insurance maps. And so the ordinance is required to clarify that you are incorporating the most recent versions of those documents. In addition, there are some amendments that were requested by MDE, which helps implement the federal regulations in the state to your regulations. They're not largely substantive. They are things like there's a change to the definition of a conditional letter of map revision to clarify what a conditional letter of map revision based on fill is, and that has to do with whether property can be excluded from the flood zone based on the addition of fill. So those are the sorts of minor changes that have been made to it. Most of them are housekeeping. In addition, I altered the structure of your Chapter 83 so that the definition sections, which were previously sort of stuck in the middle, as Article 2 are now in the front. I think it makes it more user-friendly. There are a couple of other substantive changes. There was a lowering of the number of square feet required for an accessory structure to require a variance to be permitted in the flood zone, and a change to some provisions regarding horizontal additions that I won't go into because it's technical. But for the most part, they are housekeeping changes to your ordinance.
Thank you, Ms. Levan. Any questions, Ms. Levan? I'll entertain a motion to introduce 857.
Make a motion to introduce ordinance 857. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong number.
I'm sorry, may I,
Yep.
excuse me, clarify, this is an emergency ordinance. It's on for
introduce
introduction
and
and
approve.
adoption because it needs to take effect by October 2nd in order for your individuals in the floodplain to retain eligibility for
You wanna
insurance.
do that housekeeping motion,
Be happy to.
please?
I move that we suspend the rules that interfere with the immediate introduction and adoption of this ordinance.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now, a motion to introduce and approve 857.
I'll make a motion to introduce and approve ordinance 857, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 857, done. 858, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds to be used and applied for the public purpose of financing costs of the broadband fiber infrastructure project up to the amount of $21 million. Ms. Palmer?
This also is an emergency ordinance that will need to be introduced and adopted this evening. We hope to go to close on Wednesday if you adopt it this evening. As you know, our financial consultants, Wye River Consulting, issued a request for proposals for a bond issuance for the construction of the fiber broadband infrastructure. SunTrust Bank won that request. So we have put an agreement together with them. You'll notice in the ordinance there's a term sheet. The city does qualify for the lower option, which is LIBOR plus 1.46. You have in front of you a new version of the ordinance than what was different in your packet issued on Friday. That's because there was a different interpretation of the LIBOR rate. They simply wanted to change the reference for that rate. You did pass an ordinance 856, which was the, help me out of this stuff. Not the details.
That was the parameters ordinance.
Parameters ordinance, which this follows right along. This is just the details of the actual terms of the bond. Any questions?
Mr. President?
Mr. Pecoraro?
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just wanted to, not really a question, but as Ms. Palmer just pointed out, that we did adopt some weeks ago another ordinance that did lay out the parameters for what we were about to do. And so this is in no way a real emergency in that it's unplanned, but we had planned to do this quickly when we got the bids in and were able to take advantage of the most advantageous rates.
That's correct. The emergency part of this is so that we can hold the rate.
Right.
Anybody who's ever bought a house knows all about the rush right at the end.
So I need a motion to suspend the rules to introduce and approve.
Mr. President,
Mr. Pecoraro?
I move that we suspend the rules that interfere with the immediate introduction and adoption of ordinance number 858.
Thank you, Mr. Pecoraro.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so now a motion to introduce and approve 858.
I move to introduce and approve ordinance 858.
A second.
Motion and a second. So I will make some comments and some discussion, since this is such a big deal. So it's hard to overstate just what a fantastic deal we got back from that RFP process. On a project like this big, we were frankly shocked at how well received this was by the bond market. And it was, so first point is that we're getting an extremely good deal for the citizens of Westminster to borrow this money to do this project. I mean, frankly, I've never seen terms this good for any other borrowing that we've done for the city. The interest rate's extremely low, and the terms are extremely flexible, and they basically gave us everything we asked for and more. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that when I was at these meetings recently, one of the conversation points that came up amongst some of the private companies that do telecommunication services in communities across the country is how difficult it is for them to borrow money to build fiber networks now, and that the capital markets are increasingly looking unfavorably on private companies borrowing money to build this kind of stuff. They love lending money to companies to provide services. They're not interested in lending money to companies to build things because it takes so long to make their money back, and they don't think it's a good investment for them in the private sector. But in the public sector, which has always been our sort of theory about this, is that this is the more appropriate thing for a local government to be doing, is building the infrastructure so that the private sector can provide the service. Clearly, the bond market agrees with our thinking on this because they've given us this fantastic deal. So that was very, very reassuring that we're headed in the right direction. And it was very gratifying that all our hard work is paying off in this fabulous bond offering that we've been given. So thank you, Ms. Palmer and Ms. Sylvan and Ms. Rader, who's not here, and the Wye River folks did a fantastic job putting this together, getting it out, getting the results back, and this is huge. So that's all I have.
So, Mr. President,
Mr. Kavachi.
you know, it's an enormous document, and I read through it, but I guess, can we have, Ms. Palmer, were you the point person on all of this? Dealing with Wye
I
River?
can't make eye contact
Sorry.
with you, I'm sorry.
Were you dealing on all
Wye
of
River
this?
handled all of the negotiations and the request for proposals. And then they made a recommendation to me. I took that to Dr. Reck
Right.
of the Finance Committee and Ms. Wolf, and then.
And the mayor.
And the mayor, I'm sorry. And then we moved forward with a negotiation with SunTrust.
Are we committing to a specific scenario, out of these three scenario
No,
choices?
The really great thing about this deal is that there are several opportunities in there for us to change our minds.
Mhm.
And it's, we did that on purpose because of the length of the construction of the project and because we don't know the success of the project yet. And so initially, we have agreed to borrow up to 2 years. We can do that if we wish.
But we're not obligated
We're
to
not
it.
obligated to borrow a dime. If we
Right.
choose today that we don't want to do anything, we don't have to. We can stop at any point. In 2 years, then we can make a decision whether we want to move some of that off into a fixed rate. And that will entirely depend upon the market rate that's going, the interest rate that's going in the market and how far along we are in construction. If we have moved along very quickly, which is what we hope, we'll have enough of a drawdown that we'll be able to push some of that off into a fixed rate, which will be more affordable for the city. We don't have to do that either. We can stay in variable rate. If the rates stay at this, and the Feds came out last week where they're leaving things alone for a little bit, it's favorable for us to stay in a variable rate. So they have given us every bit of flexibility that we requested, and that was all done at Wye River's request.
Perfect. Okay, answered both questions I had. Thank you.
Just one other thing, and that is, we did have a local bank, Tom
Oh.
Rasmussen of New Windsor, did cause, he tried to put together a consortium of local banks to bid on this, and wasn't successful within the time frame. But I know that councilmen always ask that question, and.
We spoke about this prior to the
Right.
meeting,
And
and
he
you're right.
did do a good job about trying to line up enough partners to take on this amount of bonding.
Thank you.
Ms. Levin.
Can I just clarify one or 2 points, which is that the conversion of the fixed rate has to occur within the first 2 years. After that, you no longer have the option to convert to fixed rate. And that when you do that, the principal, the undraw A bond, which is the 14 million, moves to the B bond. So if you convert, whatever you haven't converted will move to your variable rate at that time.
So I guess we'll have to make a decision at that point in terms of
Lots
both
of decisions.
when and how much, based on rates. Now, are we, Mr. President, I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Kavachi.
Where we're at phase one versus phase two is basically irrelevant to SunTrust. They don't care, right?
Exactly.
I mean, if we wanted to take all 21 million today, they'd say fine.
Exactly.
Right. Not that we're going to,
Right.
but it really isn't, it's not like a new construction loan where they're gonna require benchmarks at certain points to draw more money.
That is probably the biggest difference.
Right,
Other
that's
than
right.
that,
I
though, it's
noticed that.
very similar to a
Right.
construction loan. But there are no firm benchmarks like that. You're right. All right, any other questions or discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous.
We just spent a lot of money. Well, actually, we
Oh,
haven't
wait,
spent
not
anything.
yet. All right, introduction, no, I'm sorry, this is not introduction. Introduction and approval of ordinance number 860, emergency signage ordinance. First, have to,
This is?
860?
Yeah. And that is an introduction and an adoption.
Yep.
And this is just a corrective measure. You all approved a text amendment in 2011, and for reasons that are unclear, it has not gotten codified, and so this ordinance is intended to take the text amendment and put it into your actual code with respect to the sign provisions that you previously adopted.
So I'll need a motion to suspend the rules. You're kind of the guy tonight.
I'm happy to oblige, Mr. President. I move that we suspend the rules that interfere with the immediate introduction and approval of ordinance numbers 860.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Pecoraro?
So I'm happy to do this tonight. It just makes me wonder if that's happened to us in other places where we've,
As far as I know, not.
well, that's the whole point. You wouldn't
Right.
know, would you?
Yeah.
I
We haven't-
remember this.
I remember, yeah, well, we've gone into
Was it
this
that
issue.
long ago?
I don't know, we've gone into this issue a couple of times.
No, it was not that, not long. It's been just a year or two.
We
Yeah.
did it before once, too.
No, but not this, deals with
This is
the
the electronic
electronic
signs.
Electronic
signs.
signs. Well, we did electronic signs some years ago, too.
There was an intervening sign ordinance that did get codified.
But not this part.
This part did not.
All right.
And you have not had that many text amendments that we couldn't determine whether in fact there have been.
Makes me feel better.
I
Thank you.
believe what happened, there was a changeover in staff approximately that time, and you hadn't had text amendments in a while, and
Slipped on through.
it was one of those things.
So we have a motion and a second.
So, Mr. President, this is strictly the codification of this,
Something that we already approved.
because we've already approved.
You already approved it,
Right.
it already went to the planning commission, you already had a report, all of those things
Right.
already occurred, yes.
So, all in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, now we need to introduce and approve 860.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to introduce and approve ordinance number 860.
Thank you, Mr. Kavachi.
I'd like to second.
Thank you, Ms. Albert. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 860 is approved. Next, introduction and approval of Resolution 15-06, Annexation 62 Barron property. Same issue with time sensitivity, or no? Why introducing and approving tonight? Or was that not intended?
No, the intention is not to introduce and approve this evening for the resolution.
Okay, so that's just a typo. So tonight is just introduction.
Should be.
On the annexation resolutions, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so,
This is the,
tonight we're going to introduce resolution number 15-06, annexation 62 Barron.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to introduce resolution number 15-06, the annexation number 62 of Barron.
and I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
This,
You want to comment?
In your packet, there was a memorandum that preceded this that talks about establishing a general process, so I wanted to touch on that briefly.
Sure.
So, and as I look at your agenda, I think it's a typo. I think it meant introduction of approval of those resolutions, so. It wasn't intended to be introduction approval, just to step back.
Oh, I see.
It is a typo, and it does say that, but I believe that's what occurred.
Got it.
Apologies. So, as you are aware, the city has increased availability of water, and so there are folks who are interested in coming into the city and availing themselves of that water. As part of the process of looking at how we do business here, there was a staff discussion along with our city attorney, city administrator, about sort of giving a very basic outline of how annexations could proceed for your review, since we expect that a number of folks will be coming in to ask for that. If you'd like, I can give an overview of the memo, or if you feel leave it? Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Please.
The process is treated on in three places: in state law, in the city's code, and in the Westminster City County Agreement. So there's three sort of things that help form this process. The purpose of the memo is to just give the very, very highlights of the general steps. There's lots of advertising requirements, there's petition signatures, there's things that aren't mentioned here. This is just to help you and the public and everyone involved understand how many meetings are there, what do I need to do in the big steps. So we've, at the very beginning, put in an optional pre-submission meeting, so if folks want to come in and meet with staff and go over the rules and understand things, they can do that before they would formally submit a petition.
That's a good idea.
So the petition is a requirement, a certain number of signatures of folks who own property or are voters on potential annexation pieces. Submit that to the city administrator. City administrator submits that to you all, and then you are required to introduce a resolution for consideration. You're not required to adopt it at the end, but you're required to go through the process. The first step of that process, after you introduce a resolution, is that staff would start preparing the required annexation plan. That looks at things like facilities and impacts and surrounding zoning. There's some requirements in state law about how that proceeds and what that includes. At the same time, we will be forwarding the petition and application to the county for their approval per the Westminster City County Agreement. The county has the option to decide whether development occurs prior to annexation or after annexation. That's a formal agreement, and we would be working with them to determine with them which way we'll be going. The first public hearing would be before the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's required. They go through a process to look at the resolution, look at the area, look at the annexation plan, and make recommendations to you all whether this is in conformance with your municipal growth element that you adopted in your comprehensive plan, whether facilities and public services are available, and if the zoning that's proposed for the property seems appropriate for that area. So county zoning can be carried over into the city zoning at that time, or other proposals can be made. After that, the annexation plan, Planning and Zoning Commission recommendations are packaged up, presented to you all as Mayor and Common Council. You hold a public hearing. There's quite a lot of public notice for that, so this is not going to be a fast turnaround. There's 60 days of the county, 30 days of the state, and also a series of newspaper ads in different places at different times. After the public hearing, you have the ability to take a formal action based on what you've heard, based on the recommendations, and then you decide whether this area would be annexed or not. There's a waiting period after you act for the possibility of a referendum. Residents in the city can ask for it, residents in the area can ask for it, and the county commissioners can ask for it. All this is sort of state law requirements. In the end, a package is put together, it's recorded in the land records, and if you've chosen to adopt it, then it becomes a part of the city and the boundaries are changed and we get a new map. So that's sort of the big picture. And as you can tell, it does take some time. So it's not a quick turnaround, but that's by design so that everyone is notified and aware of the process and what's happening. So we have 2 requests currently that the petitions were filed with the city some time ago. And we are now presenting them to you. The city administrator has reviewed them and staff took a look. It meets the basic requirements that makes it a legitimate petition. And then those are the 2 items that are before you for you to introduce so that the process of review may begin. So
And the requirement for the advertising, that's also state law, that's,
there's some, yes, there's,
so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions?
Mr. President?
Mr. Pecoraro?
Thank you, Mr. President. So, if I may, Mr. Mackey and Ms. Levan, so it's been a while since we've done an annexation. In fact, we've probably got some members of the council who've never done an annexation. So I remember when we were doing some of these a while back, the discussion was that this is, and these are relatively small parcels that don't have much of an impact, so I don't foresee any problems here, but this is the kind of, annexations are purely within the city's choice. I mean, we don't have to respond favorably to the petitions. We can make the choice we want to make on that for what, basically whatever reasons we want to. It's entirely a legislative matter. We can do what we choose on that. Because we may get larger parcels that perhaps are, less in keeping with what our vision is for the way we want the city to grow.
So, Mr. President,
Mr. Kratch.
one thing I did pick up on your memorandum that you put together, and it doesn't apply to this, but to Councilman Pecoraro's point, we have done this, not since I've been on the council, and I've been on for 6-7 years now, so it's been a long time. But we may have more coming, and there may be some, these aren't contentious. I mean, I can't, I'm sure we're not gonna have big problems with these, but we may have some in the near future that could be a little more contentious. You commented that there is a opportunity for referendum per state law. Is that either way? If we say yes to make it a no, or if we say no to make it a yes?
No, they can't, because
you.
as Councilman Pecoraro has pointed out, it is completely within your legislative discretion to deny. The public could not, by plebiscite, compel you to enact property.
But they could override a yes.
It's a referendum to disapprove.
Got it.
And,
And then as far as the public, Mr. President, may I continue?
Please.
The public hearing part, that's for all, or, okay, that'll apply, but these particular ones have been around so long, I'm assuming that may have happened 10 years ago, but
No,
we're not,
actually,
are we
to-
requiring that now on these?
Yeah, we have to.
Oh, we are, okay.
My
So
understanding
that
is-
happens after introduction.
Correct.
Got it, okay. Good, now I'm clear.
So the history on these is that, and you folks are here because of this, right? Yeah. So these were a casualty of our water problems way back. And basically they were in limbo for a long time because we didn't have water. That's changed, so now we're moving forward.
These are your properties?
Mhm.
Oh, hey, still.
2006.
Well, let's get this done for them. I didn't realize they were here for
So you're
that.
running your mouth.
Yeah, I wouldn't have babbled on if I would have known you guys were waiting for this.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for 1506. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All
Welcome
right.
to the city. Which one of you guys are, welcome to the city. I'll leave you one of my business cards so you can vote for me later on. Kidding.
Got your name.
All right. Next item, introduction of approval of resolution 1507, annexation 63 Bollinger.
So again, that's just an introduction.
Introduction.
Thank you.
Introduction.
Right, this is for introduction only.
Introduction only.
Yes. Because.
No
Madam-
approval.
Mr. President, if I may.
Right, yes.
So the intention is to have a hearing at the next meeting, after which we can.
No.
No?
At some point.
At some point.
Planning council.
Right. Planning, and there's,
Planning Commission, then back to us
correct.
for a hearing.
And because of the advertising requirements, that will probably not be at your next meeting. It's
Oh, yeah, I said
it's a
welcome to the
lengthy
city. You're not in yet.
advertising
I'm sorry.
period. Make sure that everyone's aware
It's
of it.
coming. Right.
Multiple ads appear in the newspaper, so it may be some time before it returns to you.
I'll make a motion, Mr. President. I'm sorry.
We're just saying, can we give these folks who've been waiting some years some indication of when it might come back to us?
It's 90 days minimum, 60, 30, 90 days maybe, if everything goes okay.
No, I don't think it can longer than that. I believe they're outside parameters in the state law, and I'm just trying to tell you exactly what they are. After introduction, there is a outside.
A clock
time
starts.
when you have to
Yeah.
get that
Well,
on your agenda.
perhaps before we finish, you can let us know once you
Yes.
finish the research.
All right. So did we have a motion and a second?
I don't think we do,
All right,
actually.
well, let's get that done.
I'll move to introduce resolution 1507.
Motion,
Second?
motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, done. Okay, no unfinished business. 3 items of new business. The first is approval of fire department request for funds for life packs. You'll see in your packets a memo from the fire department. They want to buy 3 new gurneys, motorized gurneys that go up and down, and those will cost $60,000. In the past, we've held a reserve for fire department expenses, we could pay for it out of that.
Is there anybody here from the fire department, Mr. President?
I don't believe there is.
Good.
Usually we have the mayor. I'm sorry, Mr. President, you made a reference to some funds we have
Yes,
budgeted for that? And are there sufficient funds?
there are sufficient funds.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I'll be happy to make a motion to
Yeah.
approve the fire department's request.
I'd like to second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, our next is approval of electricity contract for fiscal year 2017. Ms. Palmer, I believe you were involved in this.
I am. This is a contract for electricity for fiscal years 17, 18, and 19. The recommendation is for you to go with NextEra for a 3-year contract. The reason that you have this before you now and you haven't seen it prior is because the nature of that market is that you have to lock in the rate on the same day that it is offered. And so a request went out for bids. It was orchestrated by Mr. Joe Tabling of CQI Associates. And this is the best deal that we got. This pretty much holds the line at where we are now. There's not much difference in the rate. I will say that the rate that we've had for the past 3 years has been an extremely good rate. And so we're happy that we're able to continue with a rate that's very, very similar to it. So I'm looking, or I'm asking for approval of this contract tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. I'll entertain a motion to approve the electricity contract.
Mr. President, I'd like to move to approve the electricity contract for the
Thank you,
fiscal year
Councilwoman Albert.
2017.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, questions?
So are you suggesting the lock-in for 3 years?
That's correct.
Okay, which is the last,
It is on the pricing
Statement.
sheet that you have in front of you.
it is on the back,
It's on, that's correct.
the one that's on the
It's
very back.
last one
with
on the back.
right, Okay,
0.06987 is
Right,
the
okay,
price
fantastic.
to look at.
Thank you, Dr. Becker.
Almost the same rate.
is it better?
Any further discussion?
This is what we're currently paying.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, next item is introduction of the medical cannabis overlay zone. Mr. Mackey, is this your, or Ms. Levin? Who wants to
We
handle this?
work together, so, yeah.
I'll defer to Mr. Mackey.
Okay, thank you. So this item is proposed for discussion purposes so that it may proceed to the Planning and Zoning Commission for consideration and an advisory recommendation to you all. As you know, the state enacted legislation to create a commission and set forth some rules for the growing, processing, and dispensing of medical cannabis. In order to begin that discussion, there are proposed zoning regulations that would create a mapped overlay district, which is roughly the industrial areas north of 140 and then the business and planned shopping center area along 140 and east of 97 as potential sites. The way the ordinance is proposed here is that an applicant would have to go through a process and come before you as a body to request a specific site for a specific use. There's conditions that essentially reference the requirements in state law for the premises, all kinds of security requirements, alarms, lighting, perimeter fencing, safety. The idea being that at the point that you all are reviewing them, you're essentially reviewing a site plan and a use. So that would allow a place for those state regulations to sort of find a home by being part of that site plan. And then it specifically references there's different standards for growers, processors, and dispensaries. And then last but not least, looking at some of the other things that have been going on in the state. For example, Baltimore County, I know City Attorney looked, there's a variety of restrictions and setbacks and different factors. This proposes a single possible factor, pretty much just for discussion. The idea that maybe there would be a setback from public schools. So there's a map that accompanies this that shows those proposed possible overlay zone areas and also the location of the existing public schools that you could require a setback for. Certainly, with discussion of the Planning and Zoning Commission, there may be other ideas, but this is sort of the starting point for a conversation about how does Westminster want to handle this issue and topic within the city.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. Any questions, Mr. Mackey?
Mr. President?
Mr. Pecoraro?
Thank you, Mr. President. So, just first off, thank you. I think, Mr. Mackey and Ms. Levine have done a good job with this, and I know we had some conversation about, how we thought this ought to proceed, and I think it's been captured really well. A couple things that I think are important to point out. I think the overlay idea is a good one. I think that makes this a lot more useful to us to be able to do it this way. As we look at the requirements that the state has, it occurred to me that any site in the city won't lend itself to some of the security requirements and safety requirements. And so I think the choices we're making here of what the eligible areas are make a lot of sense when you factor that in, as well as for other reasons. But that's, I think, a very important reason to keep in mind. And I think it's also important to note, Mr. President, that while I know some jurisdictions have looked at not allowing these types of activity at all within their jurisdictions, that the Attorney General recently said that the intent of the law was not to give jurisdictions the ability to remove the possibility of this happening in their jurisdiction, but rather to give the jurisdiction control over how it was going to happen in that jurisdiction. And that being the case, I think that we've thought through a lot of those issues and are proposing to allow this to be done in Westminster, and I think the smartest and safest possible way.
Thank you, Mr. Pecoraro. Any other comments or discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr.
I think
Kavachi.
one thing to note, and I know it was said a couple times, this is purely medical marijuana, not recreational. And I think that needs to be really highlighted, what we're talking about. Obviously, the state hasn't approved the use of recreational marijuana, and I think we probably would look at things slightly differently than we are now, or maybe not. But this is strictly medical, and it does not necessarily mean it's going to convey over to recreational use. So I think I want to highlight that point more than anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Kavachi. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Departmental reports, Ms. Wolf.
Well, Mr. Glass is away at a conference, so I will take the opportunity to tell you that we had a serious leak at the reservoir, which we worked 6 straight days to get fixed, and managed to do that. And all of the people who are involved in the utilities did an outstanding job over there. It was not an easy task, because whenever you work on the dam, which is essentially what the reservoir is, you have to fill in the gap. You can't leave it exposed pipe. So they would have to work, and then at the end of the day, they would have to fill in all the dirt, and then the next day they would have to come and take out all the dirt and put it back. So we are fixed now. That did involve dam safety, did involve MDE, and Jeff, to his credit, went to the Emergency Operations Center, got them all lined up. We were actually on the 2nd step, I think, of their alert system. And because we have to evacuate some people if the dam would really go. So they did an outstanding job, and the mayor has authorized me to give them all Employee of the Month awards, which we will do for their work, because they really worked very hard on this. Just so you'll know how serious this is, if the dam were to leak and we were to lose it, which is what happens when the pipe breaks, because all the dirt comes out and it can damage the integrity of the rest of the dam, it would take us 3 months to fill that reservoir back, even using the pipeline we have to Medford Quarry. That's how much water is in it. So it's a lot of water there.
And that pumps 1 million gallons a day,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
Holy cannoli.
Yeah, so it was pretty serious. I think Mr. Glass was worried this time, so when he's worried, I'm worried. But they did do a great job, really outstanding job on that. So, and then Ms. Gruber did an outstanding job on the Fall Fest, so she can pick up from there.
I certainly cannot take even a minuscule amount of credit because it really is a full city team effort to get that event off the ground. The coordination that occurs between the streets department and the police departments, recreation department, and of course the Fall Fest board is quite an undertaking, and everyone works very hard to see that event through. So I thank you, council, for your continued support, and it's nice to see so many of you turn out to that event when we're there. It's nice to see your faces roll through. So
We like a funnel cake as much as the next one.
I've got the belly to prove it.
And we did add 2 new events this year to highlight. We had our celebrity bull riding competition, and we have one of our riders in the room this evening, so thank you to Chief
A
Spalding.
loser, I might.
For being a good
Didn't the
sport.
mayor go too? How'd the mayor do?
The mayor was also one of our riders. He unfortunately
Riders.
was eliminated in the first round. So that was a very good time, and it was incredibly entertaining to watch, and I'd say successful. Commissioner Frazier was there in support of Commissioner Weaver, who was in fact the overall winner for the contest.
Giddy up.
Yeah, that's right. And the other new event that we added this year was our Downtown Dash 5K, which was Friday evening, and it basically was designed to, the race course highlighted the park and everything that was going on within Fall Fest, and then also finished right in the middle of Midnight Madness. So it was a nice way to draw a group of people into town that might not necessarily come out for Fall Fest or come out for Midnight Madness, and it ran them all around everything that was going on to introduce them to what we were doing. So that was successful as well. We had about 70 runners in that inaugural race, which was, by my estimation, very successful because we did begin the advertising process fairly late. In contrast, our numbers for the Fall Fest Mile Run, which happens right before the Fall Fest Parade, they were way up. We had almost doubled our participation this year in that particular event, reaching over 150 runners for the mile run. So certainly some very successful events within a larger event to make it just a great 4 days for the community. So we were pleased that the weather held off. And the only other thing is not next week, but not this week, but the following week, you should have all received an invitation from me to attend the community build for our new playground equipment that will be going in at Dutterer Park. So a big thank you to BGE, who is our funding partner, and Kaboom, who was basically the matchmaker for that particular project. So I have heard back from some of you already, and I certainly do hope to see as many of you present for the ribbon cutting as possible. And if you show up earlier, I may hand you a shovel or wheelbarrow or something, who knows. But indeed, I appreciate your support for that project as well. And that ends my report, unless there's any questions.
Our financial reports are in final review with the senior management team at Cohn Resnick. I do have one member of the council who will remain unnamed, who hasn't returned their confirmation. I'll be contacting that person tomorrow, hoping that they can get that in. I did want to let you know as well that we had a technology audit this year as well. That's the first year that we've had that. I do expect us to see some suggestions, perhaps even some findings related to that. They take a look at how we store our information, how we protect it, and how we access it. And so I would expect, with it being our first go-round, that we probably have a fair amount of room for improvement there. We have out an RFP right now for employee satisfaction surveys and reports. We will be issuing in the next month an RFP for fiber maintenance. That's to maintain and correct any errors on the fiber project that we approved the funding for this evening. That's all I have.
Mr. President?
Mr. Karachi.
Ms. Palmer, when do we expect a response on the RFP for the employee satisfaction survey?
Mid-October.
Mid-October? And when do we anticipate implementing that, or that's not you?
I don't know. I would say that we would evaluate the responses probably within 3 to 5 days and then be able to start on the project.
Great.
Just briefly, in November of last year, the Health Department and the Westminster Police Department partnered in the development and presentation of crisis intervention team training. This is a 40-hour block of training for police officers to teach them a special set of skills for dealing with people with either developmental disabilities or experiencing a mental health emergency. Last year we trained a dozen police officers and correctional officers from around the county. 9 of those were Westminster PD officers. I'm pleased to announce that from the 19th to the 24th of October, we'll be holding our second iteration of CIT training in the county. We're going to be training 17 additional CIT officers. And this second class represents an expansion of the program, in that now the Sheriff's Office is coming on board. They're training a dozen of their folks in this skill set. And ultimately, as this process moves forward, we see this as kind of a county-wide resource where agencies around the county will be able to provide this specialized resource, kind of like we do police canines now. If there's a need in Hampstead and we have one available, we send our canine there, or they send their canine here, depending on the circumstances. Obviously, there's been a recognition statewide that there's a need for a deeper skill set in dealing with individuals with these types of problems, and I'm very pleased that we were proactive in our approach and established this program, ultimately hoping, and it appears it will become a countywide program as we move forward. So that's all I have to report this evening.
Chief?
Since your last meeting, much of the work that we've been doing were presented to you today as items, so my coming up to speed and understanding the annexation process for Westminster, also looking under direction at the water allocation process to understand that. There's been a number of site plan reviews that have gone to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We're preparing for a Board of Zoning Appeals work session at the board's request to sort of update and understand process, and general zoning questions, building plan reviews, etc. So there's a lot coming in the door, and we expect a lot more, especially in January when the water gets even stronger. So.
So I have nothing. We obviously had a lot of things on the agenda this week, which was really rather exhausting, but it looks like we have a lot. I wanted to follow up on the one question you had earlier about the time parameters for the annexation. So the way it works is there's a no sooner than date, which is no sooner than 15 days after the close of the publication. And there is an end date, but it runs from any continuation of the initial scheduled annexation hearing. You can't continue it for more than 30 days, and then you have to act. But in the middle, there's an unspecified part, so you do have plenty of time to accomplish your advertising and get your public hearing scheduled at a time that is appropriate and efficient for the council.
We have a very busy month of October here coming up, because on October the 2nd, we also have our tree workshop, which we bring over 100 people here from around the state to learn about care and feeding of your trees. We've done that every year now. I think this is our 22nd or 23rd year, so it's a very successful event. We also have our oyster stroll coming up on October the 10th. And along with that, just so you remember, we will be collecting the oyster shells. They will go to a City of Westminster reef, which will be right down by the Bay Bridge someplace, and we're looking to see if we can have a buoy put on top of it so it looks like our clock tower. But that is that is a very interesting facet of this whole oyster stroll, is the collecting of the oyster shells so they can put into oyster reefs. And then I would like to, in case everybody doesn't know, we have somebody in the audience who has been selected as a Philanthropist of the Year for her business, Lindy McNulty.
Oh.
And I'd like to congratulate her on that honor. I hope I wasn't out of line. Tell everybody. It may be secret, but she
deserves it.
Not a
He does.
surprise.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Well deserved. All right, thank you, Ms. Wolf. So, back to the dam briefly, I love, I don't love, but these are perfect opportunities to point out why it's important for cities, local governments to maintain adequate reserves, because these are the kinds of things that are completely unforeseen in terms as to when they're going to happen, but completely predictable as to whether they'll happen, especially in cities like ours with infrastructure that's in some cases 150 or more years old. And you don't know when that's going to happen, but they're going to happen, and you have to be prepared with adequate financial resources to deal with that when they happen. So. And then I was remiss earlier, Commissioner Frazier is here joining us. I apologize for not introducing you sooner. Do you have any comments or anything you'd like to share with us?
No, just here so the county and the city can work together to betterment of all the citizens of Westminster and Carroll County.
Outstanding. Thank you for coming, Commissioner Frazier. All right, we're to the point of the meeting for citizen comments. If you have anything that you'd like to contribute, please raise your hand and identify yourself for the secretary. Mr.
Martin K.P. Hill, Woodhaven Building and Development, 4175 Hanover Pike, Manchester, Maryland. I'd just like to urge the city to continue to try to work with BG&E for common trenching on the fiber, because that is the only practical way that is going to get into the developments.
The newer development.
Newer developments.
Yeah.
Right.
We were just talking about that today.
That's what Ms. Wolf told me, but I thought it was good to still remind everyone.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
Anybody else like to be heard? All right, we're adjourned.
It really wasn't that bad.
No.
It's fast.